Hello, everyone. Today, our presentation is on negotiation and conflict resolution. Our main goals are going to be to talk about how those communication skills are used effectively in the workplace, as well as any technology that may be used in while thinking of these topics, as well as any strategies and goals used as well. And so, without further ado, I'm going to hand this presentation right over to John, and please enjoy.
Hi everyone, my name is John. Today I will talk about negotiation in a workplace environment. Negotiation skill can be beneficial in many types of scenarios, such as the ability to communicate effectively with your employer, cross-department, and with media coworker. During the process of negotiation, question and concern may arise from both parties. Ultimately, the goal of negotiation is to compromise and reach to agreeable terms to benefit both parties. Here are some skills you can apply to all type of workplace negotiation. Number one, communication. Be an active listener. It is important to understand the other party to avoid misunderstanding. Number two, persuasion. To influence the other to support your point of view. Number three, collaboration. Two parties working together to find a way to mutual satisfaction. Number four, thinking of other. This negotiation tactic is to help other party to achieve their goal, which can benefit you when working on the same project. Now that those type of skill has been reviewed, I will discuss several type of negotiation within the work environment. The one type is employee and employer negotiation. Let's take an example. During the COVID-19 pandemic, your employer asked you to return back to the office to work. Before agreeing with your employer to go back to work, you should start negotiation by listening to the new guidelines and work expectation of your employer. Actively listening to your employer to understand all terms and goals. Provide your employer with any question you may have, and in return persuade your employer to understand any of your concern. Propose any suggestion you may have that is important to you. Concern and question can be as follow. How can your employer keep you safe when you are at the office? Will the staff have to wear masks at all time in the office? How will your employer schedule employee to be in the office during the pandemic? How many days will the employee be in the office and how many days working from home? Once they understand your question and concern, the next step is to collaborate and work together to agree on mutual satisfaction. Each side may propose suggestions and feedback. You can return to work with agreed terms by both parties and abide by safe employee guidelines such as mandatory face masks at all times. In office workdays are flexible in terms of choice of workdays preference, and remaining days can be work from home. It is also agreed that employees are scheduled a week before to limit the number of employee at the office. In the end, the agreed terms will not benefit both parties. Another type of negotiation is known as department to department negotiation. This is when two departments are working together on the same project or goal. Question and concern typically consist of how can employee negotiate with other department if they need to work on the same project? How can employee compromise on common goal? What is the workload for each department and how are they distributed? How can employee compromise on rule for the project deadline? Using the same negotiation tools we reviewed earlier, supervisor from each department can negotiate what tasks they will take on. Okay. At the end of the day, having a good relationship with people you work with will improve long-term work relationship. Both parties will want their side heard and want their need to be taken into consideration. Using these negotiation skills successfully will allow everyone to leave the table with agreeable terms. It will build relationship and achieve personal and department goals. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So conflict resolution in the workplace. Conflict resolution, much like any other communication skill, is a valuable asset, not only in the workplace, but in any situation that may involve resolving a conflict. In order to reach a mutual benefit for both parties involved, certain criteria needs to be taken into account, such as active listening and communication, both verbally and non-verbally, in which this process is carried out will lead to a less aggressive outcome. Next would be negotiation, how to delegate, what it is that both parties, even in the workplace setting, would want. Last is to mediate those transactions and come to a conclusion that works for both parties as well. So, we as people experience conflict on a regular basis, here at work, at home, or in a fast food line. But how do we get from conflict to resolution? To start, and probably one of the most important aspects of uh, this is actively listen and communicate. That means to take in what the other person is saying and then internalize it. So that's how conflict arises from poor communication skills, and these are the best practices for it as well. As for communication, though, it is how the process involves the transmission of a message from a sender to a receiver, and which has the goal of eliciting a reaction or reactions. To simplify, communication is a process that is between two individuals where a message is sent in some manner and then it is received. And that is the basis of any social system. Uh, Built upon that system is actively listening, where an individual uses communication skills to paraphrase and summarize what another individual has said without misinterpreting that message. Uh, Through this process, whether either verbal or nonverbal communication, there is an active part of participation on both ends. If the method is not used, then this is where conflict may come into account. The individual may feel as though they're not being understood and listened to, or they may feel their other person's lack of listening and communication will make them upset, which then leads to more aggressive outcomes. However, to listen is to care, and it will lead to a more favorable outcome in the workplace and in life. So we now have the skills of actively listening and communication, right? That's great, but we need to know how to implement those skills into, like, let's say, a negotiation, which we've talked about before. But in terms of the conflict resolution and how they're intertwined, if a person should find themselves in a situation where both parties are at an uncomfortable impasse, it should be noted that both parties can resolve that outcome to some fashion. Effective communication, therefore, is central in negotiation, which is a direct process of dialogue and discussion taking place between at least two parties who are faced with a conflict situation or dispute. Conflict resolution negotiation. Uh, Therefore, communication takes a huge role in negotiation and resolving conflicts. Take, for instance, the workplace. Let's say Pam is had some funny pictures on her desk, and one of those jokes makes her coworker Jim upset or uncomfortable. Now, Jim confronts Pam about the pictures in a hostile way, which in turn makes Pam uh, uncomfortable. Now, Jim sorry, uh, and now they're both in the manager's office, where they both state their situation and what it is that they're looking to get from one another. Both employees were placed in the neutral setting, where they were able to use active listening and communication in order to reach an outcome. In a negotiation to help resolve conflict, there is no need for misunderstanding because there's usually a third party to help things progress. So to negotiate is to be professional in the workplace, communicate what the issues are, and be sure to participate and listen to their needs, the other party's needs. So to mediate, the third party usually helps mediate the transactions for both parties and progresses the conversation in a way that is peaceful. Now, there's no exclusivity in both negotiation and mediation as methods of conflict management because they all depend on communication, dialogue, and negotiation. These trio approaches also have their basis in language and effective impacts and realities. In terms of mediation and helping with conflict, it all boils down to the same topic as before, and that is effective communication. So be strategic about how you communicate, and that can be easily done between the two parties. If the mediator is able to derive good communication from both parties, they are more likely to leave the conflict more happy. Going back to the example of Jim, if he communicates in a neutral setting that he was upset with Pam's photos and Pam can actively listen and communicate with dialogue that shows how his tone upset her, then the mediation can run more smoothly during the negotiation. So don't be afraid to adapt to the conversation. Be able to listen and communicate exactly how you feel. So with that, both parties are apologizing and have mutual respect for one another, and then that can conclude what the issue was, resolve the conflict. And just like resolving, I'm going to go ahead and pass it along to my next teammate. Thank you so much.
Hello, and welcome to the only spot to film due to COVID. So, conflict resolution, what is it and why do we need it? Well, first of all, we need it because of work productivity. Work productivity creates a more stable job for you. And if your company is thriving, your job will be thriving. It creates a better culture, a better work dynamic, and more productivity takes things away from the unnecessary bumps and focuses your attention back on what's important. So now we know briefly why, and we'll come back to that. Let's talk about what it is and how we do it. So it involves clear communication, professional kindness, and finding the root issue. So clear communication. Funny story. I have a friend who is Latino, and they told me about a flip-flop. So when you see a flip-flop, what do you think it means? I see cute little flamingos. I know you're wondering, oh my gosh, she has such great taste. Is she gonna go to Hawaii after COVID? I don't know. Well, to my Latino friend, it does not mean vacation. It means punishment, because it's like a very well-known thing in the Latino community that flip-flops are used for spanking and punishment. So if you were to bring up flip-flops, somebody might associate it with positivity or negativity. And in class, we talk about encoding and decoding. So we want clear communication. We want other people to understand us. Just like if we're talking about water bottles, especially in 2020, somebody might think this, but really mean this, something that's more eco-friendly. Or if we're talking about flowers, my brother bought us flowers today. Somebody says, get a rose stem, and they get this. What do you think could be wrong with this? Well, maybe they wanted a red rose stem, because usually people think of red roses. Or perhaps maybe you have a friend and they say, get a scent, and they get a perfume, and they go, oh no, my friend is really holistic. They would rather have like a lavender essential oil scent. So clear communication can really change very similar things into opposites. So we want that. And in that, we're talking about, on Share Meeting, capitalizing on commonalities and working towards trade-offs. And we don't want it to be accusational or accusatory, so maybe some examples would be, this would help me because it makes my job easier or allows for better collaboration. You want it to be more friendly and open, and you don't want to use triangulation where you go above them. You want to go directly to them. So on to the second point of professional kindness. It kind of bleeds into that. when you don't want to talk down or demean another's idea. I mean, all of this is simple things we all know, but sometimes we forget. And it makes it easier for people to respond, like, communication makes it easier for them to respond, shared meaning, but also making it easy for them to not feel offensive and taking the higher road. And that's also beneficial for you, because when you get that shared meaning and when you have that commonality, they're going to understand what you want better too. And so, yeah, talking about solutions, getting back to what we were talking about, and seeing what solutions they can come up on their own with first. Because obviously you have them, but if you can get somebody to come up with the idea on their own, they might feel more confident about it or more willing to accept it. So perhaps, they need proper training, or there was unrealistic expectations, or there needs to be more delegating. And maybe they can ask their manager to reprioritize the work. There are multiple solutions here. And this leads to the third point of finding what the root issue is. Because there is usually always an underlying issue behind the conflict. Finding it and mapping it out is the way to find your road to shared meaning and connection and the resolution. And understanding what they need and why there is a conflict is important. Because back, like we talked about, maybe they don't have the tools or the time or the resources, and working on finding these solutions for these gaps that has caused the conflict. And then they get what they need and you get what you need, and it's shared in the end. It's mutually beneficial. But going about it this way ends up helping the situation. This way being focusing on taking the higher road, being kinder, giving the benefit of the doubt of kindness and not being accusatory. And you also want to be ready with solutions, because of course perhaps they don't have them. And again, keeping it collaborative, but it's important and helpful to give them space and time to think and ask questions like, what is it that you don't have? What can I help you with? And overall, like I said before, it creates a better culture and a better dynamic in the workplace, which leads into more collaboration. And more collaboration leads to better productivity, because people are working towards the same goals and being aligned on the timelines. And the lack of conflict avoids timeline delays. Other people get to go home to their families or go into other projects. People get to benefit the company and make more money, which all leads to you having a more stable job. So there's a lot of reasons that not only benefit somebody's as a human kindness aspect, but also money-wise, monetarily wise, and job security wise. There's a lot of benefits, and I hope this helped you, and I hope you have a little more understanding and enjoy the rest of the presentation.
COVID-19 has changed the way we communicate with one another in the workplace. We talked about the ways we negotiate and resolve conflict in the workplace, but are we communicating and negotiating in the workplace in an effective way? Are we using the right tools, such as technology, to get our point across? Technology plays a key role in the way we are communicating in the workplace, especially now with the pandemic. Nonverbal communication is an essential part of how we communicate with one another, from shaking someone's hand to introducing yourself with the body language that we use communicates emotional content. When we send message or communicate with our targeted audience, we attempt to use both phrases and terms that readers will understand and comprehend. The pandemic has changed the way we negotiate in the workplace. COVID has introduced a new way of communicating. According to how technology has changed negotiations by Marty Latz, the mobile platform, this includes smartphones and tablets, will rule how much of our future activities we do. This provides the convenience and a new way of communicating through technology networks. One main component in the way we communicate, according to Latz, is learning to identify and find out as much as you can about the background, reputation, and specific tactics the person or the company you're trying to negotiate has. This allows for you to learn and reach out to the people of the business that have previously negotiated with the company. In other words, networking and reaching out through various social medias, emails, or calls. It has become easier for us to obtain information on a company or a person with Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, or corporate websites, industry associations, among other networks that we currently use. The easiest way is to do our homework and research about negotiating with those companies. One idea LATS proposes to be an effective negotiator is to take advantage of the free online negotiation advice that can be found online. The effect the pandemic has had on people's everyday life, technology has provided a faster and new way of communicating. Technology has infiltrated in the way that we negotiate in the workplace. Of course, it comes with various negative effects. Communicating through technology increases misunderstanding and increase in conflict compared to face-to-face meeting. PON staff emphasizes the impact technology has on the way we communicate with one another. Technology has the positive advantages, but it also has some disadvantages when it deals with the way that we communicate with bigger companies or in any business. One main disadvantage that it has is a change in attention or empathy we have towards one another in the workplace. According to Nicholas Carr, one major impact it has on us individuals is the ability to focus, learn, and think deeply. It has been proven that our brains are not capable of multitasking. In that case, we do this when we're in work settings where we're asked to present. We do not take the time to read something from start to finish, but rather just scan through it and present what we can to make our arguments valid. Virginia Tech professor Ms. Ross studies emphasizes the impact technology has had in the way we solve conflicts and negotiate with another. The study, The iPhone Effect, is focused on the study of 200 contestants that are placed in the same location for minutes to make a meaningful conversation. The study proved that a lot of the contestants were not able to keep their focus on the conversation because a lot of them were focused on constantly looking at their phone. This caused for the conversation to be less fulfilling and less empathetic. From the contestants that knew each other, they appeared to have even a bigger disconnect and made the conversation even more less meaningful. This causes for lack of trust or changes in trust. When we are constantly focused on technology, it reduces our attention and consequently our ability to emphasize with the person we're attempting to negotiate or resolve conflict. The reduction in trust enables the cooperation of problem solving and conflict resolution. Although technology strains the way we communicate, it is challenging for people to disconnect. We use technology when solving conflicts and negotiation, especially during the pandemic. It's the main source of communication. The best way for an effective negotiation would be beneficial to put the phone away and disconnect and silence all technology when trying to negotiate or solve conflict. One main initiative that has worked for us during the pandemic in my workplace personally has been the constant communication, meetings, emails, and virtual events. Recently, we had a virtual event here at work where the company sent out a dinner for us to make while in a virtual meeting. This allowed for a lot of the tension that we have at work to just pause for a minute, and we were all able to connect with one another. This also introduces new ways of networking with others. That way it makes it easier to negotiate with other people from other financial centers. So just making a virtual meeting such as that so small, it helps to connect everybody, and it provides another way of solving conflict and introduces you to a whole new way of networking, and it makes it easier for them to help you negotiate with other businesses or co-workers.
Hi everyone, I'm Juan. I'll be talking about the goals and strategies of negotiation and conflict resolution. I believe that you might have a deeper understanding of our topic since the previous speech from my teammates. So first, as John mentioned before, negotiation is beneficial in many types of scenarios, such as communicating effectively with your employer across the department and with coworkers, which is one of the goals of negotiation conflict resolution, which would mean having better interpersonal relationship. And according to the article titled Importance of Good Communication in Business, the author have claimed that the following. Today's business world relies on relationship in so many ways. Whether you are recruiting a talent new manager or negotiating a new contract with a vendor, relationships are the foundation of success. Communication is the foundation of stronger relationship. Nowadays, many companies are paying more attention to developing employees' interpersonal communication skills, which including personal awareness and understanding. Second, as Kirsty mentioned before, clear communication in both negotiation and conflict resolution can change similar things into the opposite. And one characteristic of an effective communicator is clear communication. According to our textbook, Chapter 1, Becoming a Successful Business Communicator, the author have stated that in business, people value clarity and conciseness. Clarity is the quality of being unambiguous and easy to understand. Clear communication has only one possible meaning, which means to be professional. People often have multiple misunderstandings about communication. However, some people think that as long as they can actively communicate by themselves, they can communicate well with each other. So they hold the idea that they are communicating clearly. Therefore, to be an effective communicator is important, not only in the workplace, but also when people need to resolve conflicts. So at last, as Robert mentioned before, conflict resolution is a valuable asset in the workplace or any situation that may involve a person resolving a conflict. And to reach a mutual benefit for both parties, which is one of the goals of negotiation and conflict resolution. In the article, Language and Communication in Conflict Resolution, the author has claimed that the main goal is about creating and maintaining a just order in the society and the use of non-violent method in resolving conflicts. Negotiation was so clear and friendly emphasis on cooperation and care for the interests of both parties. This will help both parties to establish a constructive dialogue field. And now, now I will talking about the strategies. Compromising. Compromising means everyone gives up a little bit of what they want and no one gets everything they want. So when to use it? When reaching a solution is more important than the solution itself. Or when you need a temporary solution. Or when you are at a standstill. Next strategy is accommodating. It means once give up most of what they want and once gets almost everything they want. When to use it, when you are wrong, or when you don't care about the issue as much as the other person, or when you want the workplace to be peaceful, or when there's no point in arguing. And collaborating, it means everyone gets everything they want with a solution. When to use it, when the relationship is important, or when the final solution will have a significant impact, or when the interests, needs, and belief of all involved people need to be considered. So thank you.
And so that's the end of our slides, and thank you so much for listening. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the year, and Merry Christmas.